tapioca starch. It's a really simple ingredient. You probably have it in your pantry and you probably already work with it. But it might not be as simple as you think it is.
And today on WTF, we're going to look at all of our types of tapioca starch and show you how to make a great tapioca noodle. Hello and welcome to WTF, where we transform food here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen. I'm Chef Scott Guerin.
And I'm Janie Wang, one of the owners of Modernist Pantry. Here on WTF, every week we transform food with fun ingredients, techniques, new recipes. And if you like what you see, remember, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. That'll make sure that you're going to be notified of our fresh content. It comes out every single Tuesday out of our test kitchen. And this week, Scott and I were going to be talking about tapioca starch. And you probably already have some in your pantry. And we thought it was kind of a simple thing to talk about, but in reality, there are many different types of tapioca starches and they do all different types of stuff. So today we're going to cover, what exactly are the different types of tapioca starches, as well as I know Scott has a great tapioca noodle dish that he can't wait to share with you.
Yeah.
So Scott, maybe we can start off with, what is tapioca starch and what are some of the different varieties that people might see out there in our store?
Sure. So tapioca is going to sound familiar to a lot of people. Tapioca pudding, tapioca pearls, things like that. Boba, all sorts of different things use tapioca. Now what these are, the powders are not, they're not pearls in there. It's a powder. So if you can take that, you can eventually make the pearls if you wanted to. You can make a dough out of it, cut them into small little beads and then dry them again to make the pearls. But just know that the tapioca starch is not going to come in like pearl form or anything like that. So it's not the exact same as if you were to buy tapioca pearls. Now there is a bunch of differences between the types of tapioca. And tapioca comes from a root, cassava or yucca, depending on where you get it. It's just two different names for it. And it's a starch that is extremely elastic when it gelatinizes, and it has a lot of great qualities that can be modified to do many, many different things.
Yeah, and what exactly, I know that we sell several ingredients. We have them here, our Expandex, our rapid tapioca starch, and they often, we have a bunch more that are not on this table, and they usually go by the term modified tapioca starch. What exactly does that mean, and how do people, I guess, classify it, in terms of usage?
Sure. So the first one is just going to be tapioca starch. Tapioca starch is just kind of the raw tapioca starch. That's what you're going to be able to make pretty much all the other modified ones out of. And to modify them, they basically just focus on a distinct quality of the tapioca. Since it does so many different things, it has a really great elasticity. It's a great thickener. So they kind of just modify it to, okay, for, let's say, our Ultratex or Ultra Spurs. The tapioca-based ones are just for thickening properties. But if we're going to be doing something for gluten-free baking, like with the Expandex or the rapid tapioca starch, those are for that elasticity to stand in for the gluten. And then also into N-Zorbit, this is one that people have a misconception with, is that, okay, well, this is tapioca maltodextrin. I can just use any tapioca for it, right? Because this is one that's very common. It's a very cool application where you can take oils and turn them into powder. So no, you can't take tapioca starch straight up and turn it in oils into powder. You probably could, but it's not going to taste good. It's going to be extremely gritty. But you want to use N-Zorbit, which is specifically for turning oils into powder, which we have here. We have some of our chili oil powder that we had in one of our earlier episodes. So yeah, when modifying it, they pinpoint kind of a specific quality of the tapioca. They focus on that, and that's what you get out of it.
Yeah, and if you're kind of wondering, if you're thinking about, what might be a good application that you want and you're not sure how to decide, what we're going to do is we're going to have a chart up on our blog.modernistpantry.com, that essentially will list out all the different types of tapioca starches we have and what an appropriate application for them might be. So check that out for sure. I think it's going to be a great reference just to make sure that you get the right ingredient, because you don't want to get Ultratex, in order to do your gluten-free baking when you should be getting Expandex or I'm Free.
Yes.
So I think once we kind of talk about that, I think one other thing that people always ask is, can I just interchange them? And I feel like the answer is no on that. But if somebody only has one, because I know in gluten-free baking, a lot of people use regular tapioca starch already, but then we always recommend to them, hey, try one of these modified ones. What are some of the benefits you get when you switch to a modified starch?
So when you switch to a modified starch, just like I said before, it's modified to specifically work for what you're trying to do. So like I said, the rapid tapioca starch or the Expandex is going to be like the best part of that elasticity, where you could replace the tapioca starch one for one with those and get a better result. Once again, these are all testing recipes, so it's going to be, oh, I like this, but I like a little bit more, maybe I like 50-50, right? So it's going to be a lot of testing on your own part.
Right.
But just know that some of them are not going to work the same way. So you can't take N-Zorbit and add it to gluten-free baking. That does nothing, right? Because it's not focusing on that elasticity, it's focusing on the oil absorption parts of it. So just knowing, and I think the chart's really going to help, just knowing what you're looking for, and when you find out what you're looking for, this is the product that you need. And if there's any, obviously for gluten-free baking, there will be a few of them. For turning oils into powders, there's going to be one of them. So you'll be able to see on that chart the best way to kind of utilize the product.
Yeah, and once you're on our blog, we have done specific episodes around Expandex, around N-Zorbit, and around gluten-free baking and all that. So if you want recipes for those will all be available on the blog. So we kind of figure out for today, for tapioca episode, we will focus more on the regular tapioca starch and do a cool recipe around that. Do you want to talk about what you prepared today, Scott?
Sure. So I took a Laotian dish that's a very, very simple, almost chicken noodle soup, but extremely flavorful, and I wanted to show you how to do it because it uses a tapioca noodle. So what I did is I took tapioca starch and rice flour, and I made a dough. Now it's different than making a dough with, let's say, wheat flour, where you just add the water, the gluten sucks it up, and it becomes nice and stretchy. When you add water to the tapioca starch and rice flour, and it's not hot, it's just going to barely mix in, almost like you're mixing it into cornstarch, right?
Okay.
When you mix it into cornstarch, it kind of settles out and things like that. So the way you make this dough is you actually put in boiling hot water.
Okay.
And when you add in the boiling hot water, it cooks the starches. And as it cooks the starches, they become extremely elastic, right?
Ooh.
So you can see how stretchy this dough is. So this dough
looks
is
like
pretty
fabric.
much cooked. Yes. Yeah, we were joking before. It looks like a ShamWow, kind of, right? So it's extremely elastic, but this dough is cooked. It's great because then you can slice it into the noodle size that you need, okay? And you have these really beautiful chewy noodles that are also gluten-free if that's something that you're looking for, right? So they go well with any soup. They really suck up that flavor. They're extremely neutral in flavor on their own too. So I'm just going to get these into our water here just to boil. So really simple. They've with a little bit of rice flour just on the outside or tapioca starch on the outside, they'll be completely separate. So you can see, just cooking them like a normal noodle. So in this bowl, I'm just going to put a little bit of the broth, and the broth is chicken, so very simple chicken, a tiny bit of soy sauce if that's what you want. If you want just regular salt, that's totally fine. Lemongrass, lime leaves, and galangal. If you can't find lime leaves, that's fine if you just do some lemon or lime zest. And if you can't find galangal, which is common in like Asian markets, things like that, some grocery stores, but very few of them, you can just use ginger.
Okay.
Ginger's super common. So just know the flavor will be slightly different, but it's going to taste delicious on its own. So I'm going to put about 8 ounces of the broth in here.
And how long do you cook that broth for to
So about an
infuse
hour.
it? Okay.
So once I make the chicken stock, then I cook, I infuse it with the flavors for about an hour. So however long it takes you to make the chicken stock, you can just use store-bought if you really want to. We can see our noodles right here are actually coming together really beautifully. They absorb some of that water. They grow a little bit. They're really nice. So let's let them cook a little bit longer, because as we cook, they're going to firm up. And with this dish, there's going to be a few accompaniments. You just have some sliced scallion, some crispy garlic, which all these recipes will be on the blog, and then just some chicken legs or chicken thighs that we just simply roasted off. So really, really simple dish to do. So these are looking pretty good. I'm going to take them out now. So they hold up really well. Nice.
They kind of have like a udon noodle feel to them.
Yeah, so you can slice them however thick you want. They can go much thinner than this, but we really like kind of the texture of a thicker noodle with this dish. It just feels a little bit more hearty. Right. Just gonna slide them in there, not splashing. Right. This dish does have a name. It's called Khao Piak Sen. I just didn't want to butcher it, so I practiced it over and over before the shoot today. So turn this off. Great. So we have those, and let's just get into just very simple garnish. I'm going to start with my chicken. Just nice and roasted off. Go on to the side. It doesn't have to be difficult. It can be nice and simple. A little bit of my scallions. You can put as much or as little as you want. And then my crispy garlic. And I like to just kind of float these right on top of the other two so that they stay nice and crispy. It's very simple. That's pretty much it. But I wanted to show something that we could do with the chili oil powder. So if you wanted to, you can then take your chili oil powder, if you like a little bit of spice to your dish, right? You can put it in there, and as it hits the hot soup, it's going to start to melt because the moisture will then turn that chili oil powder back into an oil, and then you get a nice little bit of the spice from that chili oil.
Yeah.
So Janie, if you want to, you can absolutely have a little bit here.
I will. And I love the colors on this and how beautiful it looks right now.
Right. If you were to give it a little stir and kind of bring it all together too, you could get all that, you know, the oil will start to kind of return back to an oil, and it comes out really nice.
It really does. You take one noodle here.
Yes.
It's super good.
Right. You get a nice chew from that noodle, and it's not gritty or anything, even though it has like rice flour in it, because you are cooking that. You're cooking it twice actually. The first time you put in the boiling water in to make the dough, roll it out, and then you cook it again, and you don't get any of that grittiness. It's just a super smooth noodle that has a nice chew to it, and it's gluten-free. Yeah,
and this stock is also incredibly light, so it makes a great, easy meal. I love how this tastes. So I think one thing is someone's like, oh, I already have some tapioca starch, or I'm going to pick up some of this Druids Grove organic tapioca starch. What are some of the other ways that they can use it aside from making a delicious noodle?
So it can be used in many different things. Sometimes it can be used in place of cornstarch, I've seen, or potato starch for many different dishes. So it really depends on what you're trying to do, and if you're already using a starch in the dish, to then replace it with a tapioca starch. But like we said before, if you're doing gluten-free, we have one specifically for that. So there's going to be a chart, like we said, so definitely check that out.
Yeah, so that's really fun. You can get this particular recipe and all the other recipes on the blog, and there's also going to be a video on Instagram that will show Scott making the noodles from start to finish. So if you want to kind of see that process happening, it's a really cool thing, so you can check that out. And as always, leave your comments, questions below. If there's anything you want us to cover that you haven't seen, leave that as well, because people do toss in suggestions, and we do make it happen. So from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie Wang.
And I'm Scott Garrett. Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that bell so you get notified when we drop a new video.
To get today's recipes and all of our recipes, remember to go to blog.modernistpantry.com, where you'll get recipes, ask a chefs, tips and tricks, and more.
And if you haven't already, tell a friend so they know what's going on here at WTF.
And as always, to get any of the ingredients you saw today, you can go to modernistpantry.com to shop.
And until next time, we'll be here in the test kitchen helping you create memorable and magical experiences.